You don't even have enough for rent this month, and you're out here feeding a guy who doesn't even say thank you? That's what her coworker snapped, loud enough for half the diner to hear. But Kayla didn't argue. She just packed the soup, like she'd done every night for 6 months straight. Same time, same bench, same silence. No one knew who the man was. No one cared. But she did. Until one night, when a fire broke out and a child was trapped inside, he walked straight into the flames. And days later, when three black SUVs pulled up outside the diner, that same man stepped out in full military uniform, with stars on his shoulders, and every soldier behind him stood at attention. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Fall Ridge, New Mexico, a town with one diner, one high school football team, and one blinking traffic light that had been stuck on yellow for the better part of a year. The kind of place where everyone knew your dog's name, but not your dreams, where the sunsets were long and the silences even longer. At 7:12 every night, a girl in oil-stained sneakers walked down the cracked sidewalk of Elm Street, passing the overgrown lots and the shuttered hardware store, always carrying a paper bag. She didn't dress like she wanted to be noticed. Worn hoodie, ponytail, one headphone in, not two. Her name was Kayla Monroe, 26 years old, waitress at a rundown gas station diner off Route 19. She had a tired kind of beauty, the kind born from late nights and early mornings, from bills paid late and promises kept anyway. The kind that didn't show in selfies but did in small kindnesses. Kayla lived above a pawn shop in a one-bedroom apartment with her 14-year-old brother Noah. Their mother had passed away from heart failure 2 winters ago, and their father, well, he'd been gone much longer than that. Since then, Kayla had taken on everything: rent, groceries, school meetings, scraped knees, heating bills, and making sure Noah had a winter jacket that didn't come with holes. Her life followed a loop. Wake up, make coffee, pack leftovers, serve truckers and construction workers at the diner. Count every tip, walk home, repeat. But there was one moment in that loop that never changed. Across from Lot 23, just before she turned onto Baylor Avenue, there was a wooden fence. The paint had long peeled away. Behind it, just empty land, weeds, and rusted tin. And beside that fence, every single night, sat a man. No one knew his name. The neighborhood kids called him Ghost. Some said he used to be a miner. Others said he wandered in after the fire at the mill. He looked like a shadow, old army coat, graying beard, skin weathered like the desert itself. He didn't beg, didn't move, just sat, hands in his lap, staring straight ahead like he was waiting for something that never came. Most people crossed the street. Some muttered. A few pitied him. Kayla noticed. The first time she left something, it wasn't planned. She had a ham and cheese sandwich left from her shift. She was walking by, it was cold, and he looked thinner than usual. She didn't say anything, just stopped, crouched, and placed the sandwich on the sidewalk near him. He didn't flinch, didn't look. But when she turned back half a block later, it was gone. The next night, she brought a thermos of soup, then a pair of clean socks. Then a half-used blanket she kept in her locker for emergencies. She never expected thanks. He never spoke. But every time the offering was taken. That was the beginning of a quiet ritual that lasted 6 months. Sometimes she left fruit, other times leftovers from the diner she packed before her shift. She'd label them in marker: tuna salad, no mayo or meatloaf plus mash, still warm. One night she even left a cupcake with a single blue sprinkle. Just because. He never responded. But once after she left a note that said, "Take care. It's getting cold," she returned the next evening to find the same napkin folded neatly into a triangle, placed exactly where she'd left the bag. Another night during a downpour, she stopped by late, her jacket soaked, only to see he wasn't there. She almost turned away, but something made her leave the food anyway. When she came back the next night, he was there again, and on his lap was a familiar plastic container, rinsed and returned. She didn't know why it mattered so much. Maybe because he reminded her of someone who'd fought something invisible. Maybe because his silence wasn't empty, it was heavy, like it carried too many names. The other waitresses at the diner teased her. You feeding your ghost again? One joked. You know they don't tip, right? Another smirked. Kayla just smiled. Let them laugh. Because this wasn't about charity. It was about dignity. She'd been there, eating crackers for dinner so Noah could have something real. Walking home in winter with no gloves because she gave hers to someone who looked colder. She didn't want applause. She didn't want to be a saint. She just didn't want anyone to feel forgotten. And that's what the man looked like. Someone the world had forgotten. What Kayla didn't know, what no one knew, was that he hadn't always been a ghost. He had once been General Hayden Roth, commander of the 5th Special Forces Group, a decorated veteran, a father, a husband, a man who had once spoken to rooms full of officers with steel in his voice and conviction in his hands, until the day the chopper went down. It was supposed to be a routine transport, but a storm rolled in too fast. Communications were scrambled. The crash was hard, fire hot, and when Hayden crawled out, half burned, bleeding, something in his head didn't come with him. The memory loss was brutal. Faces blurred, names vanished, orders turned to whispers. No ID, no dog tags, no fingerprints on record, because his last mission had been Black Ops classified. He wandered for weeks, then months. Each step took him further from the man he used to be, until he ended up in Fall Ridge, sitting by a fence, staring at a world that no longer recognized him. But somehow, something stayed. A fragment, a reflex, a discipline of stillness, in a sense, buried deep in the wreckage of his mind, that he had once known honor. And then came the girl, the one who didn't flinch, the one who left food without fear, the one who made him feel seen without asking to be seen herself. He didn't know her name. But every night when she placed the paper bag near his side, something flickered in him. A flicker of duty, a flicker of memory. She didn't know it yet, but that girl, with her paper bags and late-night walks, was about to do what no military doctor, no combat psychologist, no government operation had been able to do for 3 years. She was going to bring General Roth back. Not with medals, not with orders, but with kindness. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that just shows up every night without fail. And in a world that had forgotten him, she remembered. For the next 184 nights, Kayla Monroe never skipped a stop by the fence. The town of Fall Ridge barely noticed. Life went on. The gas station flickered under burnt orange neon. The high school team lost another championship, and the same old men drank the same bad coffee in the same booth at the diner. But for Kayla and the man by the fence, something steady existed, a ritual. Some nights, she brought chili in a foam cup, covered in 2 layers of cling wrap. Other times, it was a peanut butter sandwich and a note that said, "Be safe. It's windy tonight." When her paycheck was late, she still brought something, even if it was just a boiled egg and a slice of bread. He never missed a night, neither did she. In 6 months, they exchanged exactly 0 words. But somehow they were speaking all the time. One Thursday in late October, she left a thermos of hot chocolate in an old paperback she found in a charity bin. The next night, the thermos was clean, the book dog-eared to page 47, and placed neatly where she'd find it. She smiled. She didn't know his story, but she saw his effort. He never left trash, never asked for more. He folded every napkin she left behind, replaced the lid on every container. And when kids spray-painted the fence with the word loser in angry red letters, someone had scrubbed it off by dawn. She had a feeling it wasn't the city. Winter approached. Kayla bought a second-hand blanket, rolled it tight, and tied it with string. She left it one night without saying a word. The next evening, she saw it resting on his shoulders, the corner tucked gently under his chin. She had never seen him sleep. He always sat, eyes open, watching. But the world around her began to notice. A co-worker at the diner, Jen, leaned over one afternoon as Kayla wrapped up a leftover burrito. "You're not taking that to him again, are you?" Kayla didn't answer. Jen scoffed. "You don't even have enough for rent this month? And you're out here feeding a guy who doesn't even say thank you?" "Another day," the night manager at the gas station muttered as Kayla packed soup in a container. "If you've got extra food, maybe bring it to the break room. You're not a charity." Even her landlord, Mrs. Collins, commented when she saw Kayla return one evening without her gloves. "You're too soft, girl. One day you'll have nothing left to give." But Kayla didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just kept showing up. Because she knew something they didn't. She wasn't giving out of abundance. She was giving because she understood what it meant to be empty and how much it meant when someone noticed you anyway. But there was one evening, a brutally cold Wednesday, when she arrived late. Her shift had run long. She was exhausted, but she still walked the same path. The moment she turned the corner, she froze. He wasn't alone. A boy, maybe 11, was standing in front of him, yelling something. Behind the boy, two other teens, laughing. One had a phone out. The other tossed a crushed soda can toward the man's feet. Kayla didn't hesitate. "Hey!" she shouted, storming toward them. "Leave him alone!" The teens bolted. The man didn't move. She knelt beside him. His face hadn't changed. Blank, unshaken. But his hands, once still, were shaking. She placed the food down gently. "They're cowards," she said softly. "Don't let them steal your peace. He said nothing, just looked at her. It was the first time their eyes truly met. And in that moment, she saw not a homeless man, but a warrior who had forgotten how to fight for himself. She stood and stepped back. "Good night," she whispered. The next evening, she found a small rock placed beside her food container. Painted on it, in shaky white letters, was one word: thanks. Kayla cried the whole walk home. From that day on, she began writing to him. Notes tucked into napkins. Small things. "Hope you're warm tonight. Clouds look like they'll snow. Someone cares that you're still here." He never wrote back, but he always placed the note inside the empty container. Folded, never torn. It was a conversation. One without voices, but full of meaning. Meanwhile, Kayla's life got harder. The diner cut her hours. Noah needed braces. Rent went up again. Some nights she skipped dinner so he wouldn't. But she never skipped that stop. Because somehow, that man's presence gave her strength. She couldn't explain it. But knowing he was still there, still enduring, reminded her to endure too. Then came the storm. A freak cold snap swept through New Mexico like a blade. Winds hit 40 miles per hour. Power lines went down. Schools closed. The diner shut early. Snow fell thick and wet and fast. Everyone told her to go straight home. But at 7:12, Kayla walked out with a thermos of chicken soup, gloves in her pocket, and her boots wrapped in grocery bags. The wind stung her cheeks. Her breath burned in her lungs. But she walked, and when she got to the fence, he was still there, blanket pulled tight, head bowed, a soldier in a trench holding the line. She approached slowly. "I brought soup," she said. No reply. She crouched, opened the thermos, and set it down. Then carefully she placed the gloves beside it. He didn't move. She looked at him again, really looked, and for a split second it hit her. His posture, his eyes, the way he sat. This wasn't a man who'd been broken. This was a man trained not to break. She stood up. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, "but I hope one day you remember." That night, her brother waited at the window until she got home. She was freezing, tired but smiling, because something had changed. She didn't know it yet. But across town, in that very moment, the man's breath quickened. His fingers twitched. And in his mind, foggy, splintered, broken, something sparked. A name, a rank, a memory. It wouldn't all come back at once, but it had begun, and the world would never be the same again. 3 nights after the storm, Fallridge returned to routine. The streets were slushy, the power was back on, and the diner's hot meals neon sign buzzed like usual. For most people, the cold snap was already a memory. But not for Kayla Monroe. Her gloves were gone, left behind with a cup of soup, and in their place was the word remember, scrawled into the plastic lid. It haunted her more than she wanted to admit. At the diner, she moved slower, smiled less. Her body worked, but her mind kept drifting. To the man by the fence. To the rock he had once painted thanks. To the fire in his eyes the night he stared back at her for the first time. She didn't see him again for 3 days. Then Thursday night came. Kayla was on the late shift. The diner's cook, Marty, called out, so she was manning both the grill and front counter. Her hands ached from scrubbing pans, and her back throbbed. Still, at 6:15 p.m., she prepared a small meal. Grilled cheese sandwich, apple slices, and a flask of warm tea. She placed them in a bag and tucked a note inside. "It's quiet without you. Hope you're okay. She finished her shift by 7, then clocked out and started her usual walk down Elm Street. The sidewalk was still lined with dirty snowbanks, the street lamps casting weak orange light over slush and tire tracks. When she turned the corner to the fence, her heart sank. Empty. No blanket, no boots, no man. She stood there a long time, clutching the bag, unsure what to do. Her breath came out in short clouds. She glanced around. No one. Was he sick? Was he gone? Had the cold taken him? A thousand fears raced through her. She set the food down gently, tucked the bag between the boards of the fence to keep it dry. Please be okay, she whispered, and turned to walk home. But before she reached the corner, a sound stopped her. A bang, then glass shattering. Then, the unmistakable crackle of fire. Kayla turned around. Smoke was rising from the strip mall across from the diner, the old laundromat. The orange glow was growing fast, consuming the roof. She ran. Her instincts took over. As she got closer, she saw a woman outside screaming, "My daughter, she's inside!" She ran back for her scarf. "She's still in there." Kayla didn't hesitate. She dropped her bag, yanked open the front door, and was immediately hit with smoke and heat. Visibility was near zero. She crouched low, scanning the haze. Then she heard it, a faint, panicked cough. "Hello?" she shouted, voice strained. "I'm coming." She moved between rows of machines, eyes burning, coughing. Near the last row, she found the girl, maybe 6 years old, curled into a ball behind a laundry basket. "It's okay, I've got you." She scooped the girl up and turned, but the exit was already a wall of flame. The ceiling groaned above them. She ducked behind a row of washers, shielding the girl with her arms. The fire cracked overhead. Plaster fell. Kayla gasped for air, pulling her scarf over her nose. Her vision blurred. Then, a deafening sound, metal being torn open, a blast of cold air. A figure stepped through the smoke. Tall, broad, moving with purpose. Boots stomped through ash. A thick coat, a hat pulled low. He didn't speak, just lifted Kayla with one arm, the child with the other, and carried them out into the snowy lot. Fresh air hit her lungs. Sirens howled in the distance. She collapsed on the pavement, the girl crying beside her. When she looked up, the man was gone. "Wait," Kayla called out, coughing. "Who?" But he had already disappeared into the shadows. By the time the fire trucks arrived, there was no sign of him. Only faint footprints in the snow, leading back toward Elm Street. She knew those prints. The next day, Kayla returned to the fence. Nothing, no blanket, no food, no gloves, just silence. She came again the next night, still nothing. Then on Sunday morning, while preparing for work, there was a knock at her apartment door. It wasn't Noah. He was still asleep. She opened the door to find two men in suits. "Miss Monroe?" one asked, flashing a government ID. "Do you know a man named Hayden Roth?" She blinked. I, no, I don't think so." The man exchanged a glance with his partner. "He says you saved his life." Kayla's knees nearly gave out. They explained 2 nights ago a man had collapsed on the steps of a VA hospital. No ID, no phone, barely coherent. But in his coat pocket was a rock painted with the word "thanks" and a folded napkin with the words, "Someone cares that you're still here." He had been mumbling one name, Kayla. Doctors scanned his prints. That's when everything changed. General Hayden Roth, former commander for the Special Forces Group, declared MIA 3 years ago during a covert overseas operation. Presumed dead after a helicopter crash in northern Syria, no one had found wreckage. No survivors reported. A closed case until now. They found him alive, disoriented, dehydrated, but alive. And somehow he had remembered her. Kayla sat on the couch, stunned. Her hands trembled. "You're saying he was the man by the fence?" The agent nodded. "He's in stable condition now, asking for you." She didn't know what to feel. Relief, guilt, awe? That night, she went to the hospital. When she walked into the room, she barely recognized him. Cleaned up, wearing a hospital gown, bite in one arm. But those eyes, still fierce, still quiet, met hers the moment she entered. He sat up straighter. "You came," he said, voice raspy but steady. Kayla swallowed hard. I didn't know your name." You didn't need to, he said. You remembered me when I didn't remember myself. Tears filled her eyes. They sat in silence for a while. Then he looked at her and said, for months you brought me back, one paper bag at a time. She couldn't speak, just nodded. As she turned to leave, he lifted his hand, old, scarred but steady, and offered a salute. Kayla froze. Then slowly she placed her hand over her heart and smiled. Word of General Hayden Roth's reappearance spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, Fallridge, which had never seen anything louder than the 4th of July parade, was swarming with reporters, military vehicles, and whispers. Every diner booth had someone talking about it. They said he was dead. 3 years. He was sitting by that fence all this time? You mean the girl with the food? That was her? Kayla didn't answer any questions. She kept working, kept bringing soup to customers, refilling coffee cups. But her world had tilted. 2 days after her visit to the hospital, she received a phone call. Miss Monroe, this is Colonel David Harrow from the Department of Defense. General Roth would like to speak with you again. And if you're willing, we'd like to honor your role in his recovery. Kayla declined the ceremony. She didn't want the attention. She wasn't trying to be anyone's savior. But the colonel insisted they at least deliver something to her in person. That Friday, 3 black SUVs pulled up to the diner. The customers stopped eating. Silverware paused midair. Out stepped uniformed soldiers, decorated, crisp, silent. One of them opened the rear door, and Hayden Roth stepped out. In full dress uniform, clean-shaven, hair cut, shoulders squared like he'd never left command. He walked into the diner like he had walked into briefings for 25 years. Quiet, deliberate, with absolute focus. He stopped in front of Kayla. The entire diner had fallen silent. Ma'am, he said, voice firm, permission to stand at attention. Kayla blinked. What? He straightened, raised his right hand, and saluted. Behind him, every soldier in the room did the same. Customers stood up. The cook came out of the kitchen, wiping his hands, confused. No one spoke. Tears welled in Kayla's eyes. Roth lowered his hand. You reminded a soldier who he was. When the world forgot, you remembered. When I couldn't speak, you fed me. When I had nothing, you gave without asking. He stepped aside. Another soldier approached, holding a velvet box. Inside, a military challenge coin, custom made. One side, the insignia of Roth's unit, the other engraved with 5 words. For service without recognition. KM. She stared at it, unable to breathe. This, he said, is from all of us. For all the nights you thought no one noticed. The soldiers turned, exited. Roth looked back one last time. I'll be in touch. Then he was gone. Kayla stood in the middle of the diner, holding the coin, tears running down her face. It was the only time she'd ever heard a room full of Fallridge residents go completely still. That night, she walked past the fence. Someone had cleaned the bench. Fresh coat of varnish, a small plaque. It read, this spot once held a soldier. This spot once held a friend. This spot will always hold respect. She sat down, watched the sunset. There was no paper bag tonight, no gloves, no soup, just a girl and a memory, and a man who now remembered everything. A week after Roth's visit, Fallridge wasn't the same. The diner was busier than ever, but not with reporters this time, with veterans. Young, old, retired, active duty. Some came in uniform, some came with families. All of them asked the same thing. Is this where she gave him food? They didn't want attention, just coffee, just a good moment, just a seat near the window where Hayden Roth had once sat in silence. Kayla quietly renamed the booth. No sign, no ceremony, just a folded napkin, a clean plate, and a note tucked under the edge of the table, reserved for the forgotten. Then one morning, she arrived at the diner to find something taped to the front door. A printed letter, a photo, and a name in bold. Lieutenant General Hayden Roth. The letter explained that Roth had requested to use a portion of his military pension to establish something he called the KM Initiative, a private grant for civilians who had shown acts of sustained kindness to veterans in need. Quiet help, no cameras, no recognition. Kayla was listed as its first recipient. It was enough to cover Noah's schooling, enough to pay off debt, enough to breathe, but that wasn't what made her cry. What made her cry was the second envelope. Inside, her gloves, cleaned, repaired, folded neatly, and a note. You remembered me. Now I remember you. You brought me back. Now I'll never forget. HR. That Sunday, the town held a quiet gathering. No speeches, no marching band. Just a few folding chairs, a podium, and the townspeople who had once whispered about the girl and the ghost by the fence. Colonel Harrow spoke briefly, then he stepped aside. From the back of the crowd, General Roth emerged, dressed in full uniform. And behind him, rows of soldiers, veterans, a full honor guard. They lined up in front of the old fence, now fully restored. Roth took his place at the center. Then before all of Fallridge, he saluted the bench. No one spoke. Then slowly, one by one, every soldier raised their hand. And then, so did the townspeople. The cook, the mechanic, the school principal, even Mrs. Collins, Kayla's cranky landlord. They stood, they faced the bench, and they saluted. Later that week, Kayla sat on the bench again. The sun was setting, just like it always had. But now the world felt warmer. A child passed by, holding her mother's hand. She pointed. Mom, is that where the nice lady fed the soldier? The mother nodded. Kayla smiled. She didn't need a medal, didn't need a headline. She had a memory, a coin, a bench, and a man who had once been forgotten, now remembered by everyone. Because sometimes you don't have to save the world. You just have to save one person long enough for the world to find them again. And that is enough. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.